within the last 2 months at most, I made a big post about how upset I was at how many people asked me about creatine. Because when I do a Q&A, not since I made this post, but when I do a Q&A, the most common question I've gotten for years is about creatine. Even now, when I still do Q&As, I still get them from new followers or people who missed the post, but it's about creatine. Should I take creatine? Is creatine good for women over 40? Is creatine good for a high school kid? Creatine. Everything is about creatine. How much creatine should I take? How long is the loading phase? What type of creatine? And I was like, I got so mad. I ended up making a really like angry post at like 10 p.m. My wife was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm making this fucking post. I'm just so angry." Because that's usually when I do my Q&As at night. And I was like, listen, yeah, creatine is one of the actual few supplements that legitimately has benefits. Mm-hmm. It's one of the few that actually makes sense to promote. It is one of the few. But I know for a fact the vast majority of you asking me about creatine haven't worked out consistently for 3 years. You haven't had a salad in the last 3 fucking years. You never hit your protein intake. You don't go get your steps in. You are up until 4 a.m. scrolling, and then you're drinking alcohol 4 or 5 times a week. You aren't being consistent with anything, and you're asking me about creatine. You should only even think about it if you've been consistent with strength training, consistent with cardio, consistent with nutrition, consistent with sleep for at least 3 years. And it should not be the most common question in my Q&A. Not even remotely close. And that's one of the good supplements. Like, that's one of the supplements that actually makes sense. Never mind the shit supplements.
Yeah. Preach. We are fully aligned on this one.
I made you see my post on electrolytes yesterday?
I don't think so.
People got really mad because it's another big one, and actually, by the way, another supplement that actually can make sense. I would say it makes sense less than creatine does with a smaller portion of the population. But basically, I'm seeing all these motherfuckers promoting their LMNT, everywhere. Electrolytes, everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
And I made this whole post. I was like, do you realize, number one, that they can actually be very dangerous if you don't need them? People are hospitalized regularly for them. I was like, there are some people who it makes sense for. If you are an endurance athlete, it can make sense for you if you're training and sweating a lot. If you work in manual labor, especially if you're working out in the heat and sweating a lot, it can make sense. If you're pregnant or breastfeeding, it can make sense. It could potentially make sense for people on GLP-1s. And there are other potential, like if you have POTS, some other medical issues, it might make sense. But if you're a recreational lifter and you're lifting in an air-conditioned gym 3 to 4 times a week for 30 to 60 minutes and you're barely sweating, you have no reason to be taking these things. And it can cause cardiac issues. It can cause real fucking problems. And I made that post, and a number of nurses and doctors were and I pinned their comments being like, "Thank you for saying this. We're seeing an increased number of people who are being hospitalized for it." It was like, it's insane. And so many people are pushing it.
Preach. People don't realize that they're consuming something that they already are getting in their foods, and they don't know how much they're getting in their foods, nor do they know how much they're getting in these packets, nor do they know what they should be targeting on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And so I would imagine it depends on the product, right? Because the sodium to potassium ratio is different depending on what electrolyte you're taking, but I would imagine there's more overconsumption. I mean, obviously you can overconsume potassium and there's downsides to that too, but overconsumption of sodium doesn't seem difficult if you're eating like a decent amount of processed foods, if you enjoy if you're salting your foods and then you layer on top of that having electrolytes and you're not sweating very much.
And by the way, my wife uses electrolytes because she has really low blood pressure.
I use electrolytes once in a blue moon when I need to. If I'm playing 36 holes of golf and it's 90 degrees outside and I don't have an opportunity to have a salty meal at the turn and I only am consuming potassium, I've had 2 bananas for snacks. I'm like, okay, I want to get some sodium in me. Great. I'll put a sodium packet in a 24-ounce thing of water or an electrolyte packet and get 500 mgs right there or get 750 right there. But few and far between. You don't just take it first thing in the morning because adenosine system and and don't drink caffeine, but have a lot of electrolytes.
And then I had these people being like, what if you're regularly hungover? Like, then you've got other fucking problems. If you're regularly, you've got other fucking problems outside of electrolytes. All right. Dear Lord.
Yeah. At the end of the day, not just this electrolyte thing, but kind of back to your creatine, the high levels of interest and questions about creatine and hyper focus on supplements in general from the Gen Pop. It doesn't seem like it's much different than the instinct that's always been there for a shortcut, for if I can take this instead of doing this and it's going to get me a positive result, any kind of like magic pill belief where if I can get results by taking this thing instead of doing the hard thing, great, I'm going to do it. The problem is that quick fix basically doesn't exist in any area of life.
Correct.